Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, listeners, and in particular, the learners in high school curriculum, that is Form 1 to Form 4, but more specifically, the candidate class. These are hard times, and as we say in English, hard times calls for hard solutions, sometimes demanding that you have to go an extra way. And for this, I want to salute all the teachers across the 47 counties who have gone outside of their comfort to make sure that learners are mitigated in terms of provision of lessons through various platforms. And whenever I come to KUTV, I first of all give my accolades and a lot of complementarity to Kenyatta University, which happens also to be my alma mater, for such a platform that you are providing to learners. This goes a long way. Learners, psychologically speaking, I know you're also going through a lot. This COVID-19 has not left or spared anybody. We are all in this quagmire. But as we say, every cloud has its own silver lining. The president indicated the other day, if you listened to him keenly, he was with a certain intonation alluding to the fact that the lockdown might come to an end very soon. And once normalcy returns, we know that our schools shall also reopen, churches and mosques shall reopen, and life will come to normal. I'm one very optimistic individual who believes that Corona must not stop everything. Life must go on, and if you're just there having thrown into a towel and you think that life absolutely stops with COVID-19, then I think you are doing a lot of injustice to yourself. You must make sure that the very basic minimum of your life is actually going. Your heart hasn't stopped pumping, has it? No. Your digestive system keeps on working. Your brain must also keep on working. And as I've already told you in the past, that when you stop reading, then your cells, brain cells start dying off. And I presume that the learners have not stopped reading. Finally, in my introductory approach, I want to first of all wish all our Muslim brothers and sisters a very good Eid Mubarak today. They celebrated yesterday an extension of the national holiday today. As you celebrate, as you enjoy, I want you to meditate and also to pray that all things shall be okay. And finally, being an African International Day, we are celebrating Africa. And there is no better position to be celebrated than celebrating your home, your culture, your identity, your heritage. So all Africans listening to me, and even non-Africans who enjoy, one thing that you should know, listeners, is that the African cultural identity and heritage and diversity attracts very many, all and sundry. People have come from Europe, they have come from America, they have come from Asia. And when they finally land into this good continent, they fall into love with the continent, they embrace the continent, they learn the language of the continent, they practice the cultural practice of the continent, and finally, some are even, they have lived and died and buried here. I remember my very good friends, Dr. Grievins, the former director of Starehe Boys Center and School, who actually came and fell in love with the country, plus so many others. History has a very replete examples of that. So be proud of yourself. And I'm talking to pessimists who think that the African continent is a black continent that is inferior. You are the one with an inferiority complex, an inferior mind. But the black continent is actually the cradle of humankind. The black continent, being African, does not mean that you are playing the second fiddle. It means that God gave you an innate ability to be even better than any other continental existence. So as Africans, we really thank that we are in this part of the world, and we provide a lot of solutions to many things. Some of you might not know that, but just go and read the books of history, and you realize that we do not play the second fiddle. I remember one day I taught a poem here called I Too Sing America. I Too Sing America. A very good poem written by Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes, who is a black American. A black American. Some people will try to demean them by calling them the black niggers, the Negro, and all that. But you look at these guys in terms of their intellectual capabilities, in terms of even their physique. Some of these black Americans are the ones that are award-winning. When you form a pedigree of the black and the white, or a mixture of that, you realize that even in your own skin, that melanin content has a very good advantage as juxtaposed to others that we do not want to mention. So when he talks of I Too Sing America, he meant the spirit of equality, that there must be zero discrimination. There must be zero discrimination. And stanza 1 of that poem was very clearly, you send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I eat and grow strong. But I dare say that tomorrow I shall be at the dining table, for I too sing America. So in that essence, you realize that when you are an African and in your mindset, you know that you can compete with any person from any other continent of this globe, then you know that you have what it takes to actually compete on the world stage. And just like Shakespeare said, we are all actors on this stage. You must do your part, let the other actor do her part or his part, and then the narrative, the choreography, the story shall be told. Anyway, that was good for the introduction and for the lesson starter. We now dig deeper into what brought us here today, which is literature. My very simple message to teachers before I embark on my recipients who are the learners is that teachers, especially teachers of literature, you must teach literature in a very enjoyable perspective. Literature does not even need a lot of strategies that we go through in pedagogy, such as learner-centered activities. When you are enjoying a lesson, when you introduce a lesson in literature, it automatically becomes learner-centered because you are bringing in a lot of thought-provoking ideas. You are looking at critiquing. There is the element of critique. There is arousal of thoughts, thoughts provoking ideas, and you are also looking at discovery, which I talked about last week before we had a technical hitch. So in this case, literature teachers do not need a lot of seminars. They do not need a lot of in-service training to be taught how to teach. Literature itself gives you a lot of dynamics in terms of learner-centered approach. And when I talk about learner-centered approach, 21st century and beyond, I presume that there is no teacher who can just stand before the learners and be the sage. I think I have a line there. Are you? And in the morning there was a question tags, tag questions. So I'm asking you this simple question to my teachers. Are you a sage on the stage, or you are, or are you a guide on the side? So you can see that that is two very powerful questions with a lot of rhyme scheme. Students, you remember that if this goes on the stage and the side. So ask yourself, are you a sage on the stage where you are spewing knowledge from all the entire 40-minute or 1-hour lesson? You are the custodian of knowledge, telling the people memories we lost, the novel Blossoms of the Savannah or the play A Doll's House, and the students do not have an opportunity to be engaged. So are you a sage on the stage, or are you a guide on the side? And obviously, the second statement becomes very correct. You must be a guide on the side. And I think this is going to inform post-COVID-19 teaching, where you must now facilitate the learners. We haven't had a lot of time with them. So they are going to be the custodian of the learning process. They have been reading on their own. In fact, if there is a grade that learners will score at the end of this year, if the exam shall be administered, I think it will be solely by the student ability. That is the only student who can walk and say, this grade that I got was over 70% my effort. So teachers, in this case, we have also been rendered helpless by this coronavirus, that it pains us that we are not in a position now to provide this to our learners. Very well, we did say that our points of interest in paper 3 or in literary appreciation is 1, content, or what we call textual information. Textual information. Learners, this is where your 70% of your timetable should be on. I remember when I was in high school, you could actually wake me in the middle of the night with the course book, with the textbook that we are doing, either a compulsory or an optional one, and ask me or make a quotation, and I will tell you the exact character who say the words and on which page those words appear. That is how some of us could actually dig deeper. We could go down to the gold mines to extract what the examiner looked for. So we will spend most of the time to looking at the 3 books, the 2 compulsory ones and the 2 optional ones in terms of textual information. This is where the examiner will know that you, as the learner, has been reading at home. And I did say that some schools, nearly all the schools, understood the effect of this situation that we are in, and they provided the set books with the learners. So the learners are actually reading. And when you are reading intensively. You are reading in between the lines to know, to answer all the WH questions. The WH questions that is required. The what, the who, the where, and what, who, where, and why, when. All those WH questions will be answering our excerpt questions. Because normally when we ask excerpt questions in paper 2, that is the question that first of all comes, and it attracts 4 marks, 4 good marks. Who said that? Where did he say it? Why did he say it? And in what context did he say it? So normally, this is a very good question when we are doing what we call the episodic analysis of our plot analysis. When I was in high school, we could do the plot. You could just stand here and say, oh, Memories We Lost is a story about 2 girls who are sisters. One is going through mental anguish because of this, and they discover, and finally the other sister. That is what we did. But right now, I encourage all the learners plus their tutors to adopt an episodic approach. And I will be showing how an episode is built in a couple of minutes. Because right now, even the exam system has changed from the plot analysis to an episodic analysis. It has been realized, according to the Bloom's taxonomy, that when you break down the content, it is easier for the learners to digest an episode than to do an entire book in terms of the plot analysis. So teachers, kindly, it seems today I'm not just talking to learners alone. I'm also giving tips to how we teach literature. So adopt an episodic approach rather than using the plot approach, which is now quite obsolete. Huh? It's obsolete. It's not only obsolete, it's archaic. Huh? Huh? Somebody is saying it's also backward. Huh? Backward. Huh? So it's all these words can. So if you are still the teacher that is teaching the plot analysis, I think you belong to the archive of or the Museum of History. You need to be taken to somewhere along the museum hill for people to come and see you as an artifact. Thank you very much. We are moving on well. So students, the WH questions are very, very important when you are doing content. And there is no shortcut. You must read in between the lines. There's a problem here. Our learners, and some of them will even use COVID-19 as an excuse. There is no excuse when it comes to reality. When the exams shall finally come, you will not say in the essays that I did not read this story because I was affected by COVID-19. You'll be so useless. In that case, we envisage that all of you are reading. And we are reading, first of all, The Blossoms of the Savannah. Blossoms of the Savannah. A novel written, a Kenyan novel, by extension an East African novel written by Henry Ole Kulet. So I will start with that. I'm giving 10 minutes each for the book. I might not get adequate time to explain each of the content, but I will only be interested with the areas that the examiner might look at. And what are these areas in trying to answer all the WH questions? Number one, we are interested at looking at the title. And when we are looking at the title, we are answering ourselves, what is the relevance of this title? Has the title been used adequately? Is the title sufficing the need of that? When you say blossoms, I first of all ask students a simple question. What is to blossom? And my student gave me a lot of synonyms to the word blossoming. They said it means to thrive, it means to grow, it means to synergize, it means to rejuvenate, all those. It depends with how you are grammatical, how your choice of words will give you. So all these you can actually add on. So why did this Maasai writer, who happens to be my good friend, use blossom? Then there is the savannah. Now savannah is much more geographical. If you are a geography student or just a fun-loving person of the ecosystem, you have come across the word savannah. And in this case, it is a part of the ecosystem, actually. The geographers will tell you it is mainly consisted of grassland, some thicket, and all that. However, in the savannah, there is what we call, with my little biological knowledge, what we did in high school called the struggle for the fittest. Survival, struggle stroke survival for the fittest. I'm told that that is a very good biological term, survival for the fittest. That in this particular ecosystem of the savanna grassland, it is only the mighty. It's only those that have what it takes, the thick skin, the adaptive ones that we'll actually see tomorrow. I like drawing the analogy of the antelope and the lion in that savanna. The antelope must run so fast to a point where it is actually not eaten. So it is running so fast not to be the lion's meal. Yeah? So to save its life, the antelope must outrun the lion. For the lion not to starve, it must outsmart the antelope. So you see a situation where two organisms in the same ecosystem that is very harsh. I think we can add in the savannah, it's a very harsh environment. And you will agree with me that even in our modern living, our modern life situation, even with this COVID-19, we can equate our modern living environment with the savannah, that there is no easy walk in the savannah. So I think on that thinking, Henry Olekulet chose that title, Blossoms of the Savannah, to be the title of this compulsory novel, to insinuate a fact that it has never been an easy walk in the savannah. In the savannah, there is a lot of struggle. In the savannah, unfortunately, there are casualties. In such an environment, there must be victims. You look at any form of revolution, victims must also be there. So in that case, students, you are going to connect those two titles now to come up with your explanation. And we are answering a very common question that can easily come. How relevant is the title Blossoms of the Savannah by Henry Olekulet? 20 good marks. So in that case, we are looking at despite, this is the statement, that despite the hostility, the hostile environment, environment of the savannah, we have what? We have some species. We have some species that do what? That survive. Yeah? That is a summary of what Olekulet wanted. Now, this is from the layman's approach, the literal approach. To put this into our context of the book, we are looking at the harsh reality of the environment in which, because I gave an example of the antelope and the lion from what we know, knowledge is moved from the known to unknown, according to Bloom's taxonomy. So a good student taking notes is asking, now, if I equate this to my book, Blossoms of the Savannah, who is the antelope and who is the lion? You realize that my good friend Henry Olekulet takes two very vulnerable characters. That is Resian and Taio, who happens to be actually very close friends. Sisters, sorry. Resian and Taio, born of two parents. Obviously, everybody, that is quite redundant. You cannot say I'm born of two parents. Born of Mama Milanoi, and Ole Kaelo. Now, in that case, we are looking at them, at these two girls, and especially I want to put an asterisk on Resian, who happens to be very, very optimistic. When she is born, she already knows what she wants in life. You have had such children. Siblings. Yeah? There are some children that do not need to be reminded of what they know and they want in life. Others need constant reminder. It reminds me of my high school motto, use your common sense. That was our high school motto. It kept on reminding us, ringing the bells in our mind, that unless you are very mindful, cognizant of the fact that you need something in life, then you can easily digress. Resian, from the very early stages of her life, she already had heard of her mentor. And it's always good, boys and girls, to have a mentor. The mentor could be somebody you have already interacted with, or is just in the imagination. You see him on TV, you have read him in books, you have read him on blogs, and you just say, if I grow up, I want to be like that person. The mentor to Resian is one Minik Ene Goitoi. You have seen that now we are actually in the we are in the Maasai land. Minik Ene Goitoi, otherwise simply known as the Emma Kererei. Emma Kererei. It's quite a word, eh? Emma Kererei. The Emma Kererei was the corrupted version of a lady, a very super intelligent lady who had gone to Makerere University and pursued a degree in veterinary science. So, from the very earliest opportunity that Resian comes into existence, she already is looking up to Emma Kererei, and she wants to read so hard to pursue her dream of becoming a veterinary scientist. She actually even knows where she will go and pursue her university degree. That is Egerton University. So you see that this is a very brilliant lady. She already knows. I don't know, you seated there in the living room of your mom or dad or aunt or wherever. If you already know your trajectory in life, it is very easy to deal with a student who knows where she is going or he is going than to deal with a certain mongoloid who does not know where he is going. Eh? And that's why I sympathize the guiding and counseling team in our schools. I sympathize with, there's some fellas, they're just there. Eh? In fact, it's better if you take zombies. You must have a plan. You must know that once I'm done with high school, I will go to the university or I will go to college, then I will pursue this. That realization alone will give you an edge over, and will give easy time to your parents, to your mentors, to your caregivers, to your career masters, and the rest who actually are in charge of your pastoral program. So in that case, students, Resian and Tayo knows. However, there's a very sharp contrast. There's what we call in literature contrast. If you want to sound more sophisticated with literary terms, you can use juxtaposition between Resian and Tayo. Yeah? Resian is actually hated or disliked. Let me use the word dislike. Is disliked by the father. While Tayo was the apple of the eye. Was the apple of the eye to the father. She was a darling. And the reasoning was very simple. Tayo is the elder sister of Resian. When Tayo was born, obviously, there was no question of sex and gender. So the first girl, the child that came out was a girl. But when Resian is born, Ole Kaelo, who happens to be a very dominated with male chauvinism. He's a male chauvinist. He's a dictatorial father, a father that uses an iron fist, even on solving simple conflicts. Let me tell you that in life, conflicts will always come. These conflicts can either be simple or mega. You can talk of micro conflicts or macro conflicts. How we go ahead to deal with them amicably is what humanizes us. Somebody said you cannot respond to a mosquito that has landed on your body part by use of a sledgehammer. You will hurt yourself. Sometimes it requires of you to critically look at the crisis or the conflict beforehand and say, what if I look at this amicable solution out of it? It does create humanity in us. It creates even sustainability in us. But every time we become so irrational, like Ole Kaelo here, Ole Kaelo just hated the daughter because he wanted a son. He wanted a boy. And that brings us to the question of gender. Yes, we are celebrating the African culture, African identity today. And that's why I said, in as much as we take ourselves as very superior, but there are some African cultural practices that we said have become obsolete. They are obsolete. They need to be done away with. So students, I want you to comment those who are listening to me, can you share with me on the platforms that are running beneath this screen some of the cultural practices that you think are barbaric, they are obsolete, they are archaic, and therefore they need to be done away with. When you answer that question, you are right with me in this particular book, The Blossoms of the Savannah. So that one, I'm giving you 5 minutes to send some of the obsolete cultural practices that you think should not be part and parcel of our 21st century going beyond. Some are debatable, some are outright yes and no. And that is what Henry Olekulet. Some students came to me and said, teacher, why are we doing this book? It's so boring. It talks about the culture. No, I told them, for how can we know where we are going unless we know where we are coming from? There are some pertinent issues that Olekulet has raised here. So in that case, the girls face some of the draconian African cultural practices, and it becomes very difficult for them to survive or to blossom. So it is actually a battle. It is a strong battle that they must overcome in order to become the right people that they want to be. Remember, I've just said that Resian's commitment, Resian's vision is to go to the university, pursue veterinary science. Is it a walk in the park? No, it's not a walk in the park. So in that case, they are looking at ways out. When you actually identify all the bottlenecks that they face, and now finally we look at the solutions. How do they overcome? And in that case, it means that bold steps must be taken. A bold step such as Resian deciding to run away. To do what? To escape from the family because the father wants to marry her off. Only to land into the very awkward hands of Oloisdori. And finally, that whole story on how she now gets to meet her mentor, Makerere, is not a walk in the park. So I said that we might not have adequate timing to do that, but maybe towards the end of this lesson, I will encourage some of the questions, or I'll put across some of the questions so that we know that. But as you do the novel, ask yourself very pertinent questions. One, I have already put that question to you. List down 5 obsolete cultural practices that you think are outdated and they must be done away with. Number 2, what is your view? What is your view on what we call FGM, female genital mutilation? A very, very pertinent question. Number 2, what is your position on forced early marriages, especially in Kenya and Africa in general? Forced early marriages. Number 3 is, do you think girls and boys, in terms of now gender roles, do you think the males should be equal to the females in terms of 1, decision making, number 2, in terms of parentage, and also in terms of making their own? Because I'm asking this particular question on gender equality because Olekulet really expounds it very, very vividly when she brings in the question of who actually brought in FGM. It is a very dicey situation. I know some teachers will even shy away from the question, who actually brought female genital mutilation? It is the females or the women themselves. And that goes back to the story in a story, what we call the anecdote that is in this particular novel, called the story of the Ilarinkoni warriors. The Ilaringoni warriors. That many years down the line, the Ma had been attacked or invaded by the Ilaringoni warriors. And there was a lot of torture to men and women and even children. So women actually gathered and said, and part of the torture was actually to torment, to abuse the women. Because the warrior, the Ilaringoni warrior, had demanded that all women within their siring age should be brought to the warriors for their pleasure. Yeah? So the women really thought that, how can we really come out of this? So they really strategized and said, no, we must do something to put to an end this thing. And they said that there was something in them that they discovered that caused what we call the salacity, the involuntary salacity when it is provoked. I think when you read in between those lines, you will get what Henry Olekulet meant. And they said, for us now to put an end to these barbaric warriors from molesting us, we need to mutilate our bodies. Now the question is, the Ilaringoni warriors are long gone. Why are they still doing what? Why are they still doing that practice? So in that case, you can see that that question can easily come. Number 4, are women their own worst enemies? And I think, yes, it is. Even in our own contemporary life, because literature is comparing with what happens. Women are their own worst enemies. I know that is quite debatable. But when there is a woman president vis-a-vis a female president, presidential candidate vis-a-vis a male presidential candidate, the women will come out en masse to vote for a male. Isn't that being your own worst enemy? Yeah? When women are converged somewhere, they are talking about, they are actually gossiping. They are over 80% of their talk is centered on grapevine. And they are actually backstabbing, they are talking ill of their other fellow woman. Isn't that being the worst enemy to yourself? So, as women, you need to up your game. You need to know that over 70% of your problems are actually homemade. When I say homemade, you manufacture them. In fact, right now, when you meet them, they say, oh, these men are bad, the men are dogs. Who cheated you? No. You just need a paradigm shift of your mindset. Then you become a better woman. A better woman is one who is conscious of herself. You don't need read, I'm a literature fella, and I say there is what we call the agony of one story. Agony of one story. You have not turned the flip side. So when some of the women who have actually had their even domestic matrimonial homes collapse, when they go back to their parental home, they are talking, they are talking ill of their parents, of their spouses. But have they given their spouses an opportunity to defend themselves? Anyway, that is trying to look at. I know they can also come out guns blazing and say, no, Mwalimu, you are also looking at a one-sided story. Yeah? But the book here is very, very simplistic, that if women can be critical, they can also provide solutions to themselves. If you are spreading the gospel of gender roles, you must also do your part to bring in the gender equity. Very well. I don't know if we have some time now to look at the compulsory play. My director, how many minutes do you have? 15 minutes. I'll run through 10 minutes in the blossoms of the savannah as you answer those questions and give me feedback on that. I asked you a very critical question. Let me presume that we'll also get some time to also review this before maybe we get back to school. Blossoms of the savannah. was our first one. Now we want to look at a doll's house. A doll's house. Last week I said that the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development does not just give you a book that is within your environment. They gave you a novel within Kenya and its neighborhood, that is the East Africa. And therefore, the rest of the other set book must come from what we call beyond Africa. This is a Caucasian play. And when I talk about the Caucasian play, I mean it is Europe. The cultural, that's why we must make sure that our students are given priority. They are given diversity to know not only their African culture, but also to know other cultural existences such as the American culture, the European culture, the Asian culture, the culture of the, all different forms of culture. And in that case, A Doll's House is taken from there. And you can see that, in fact, I'm one teacher who draws a lot of similarity between Blossoms and Caucasian. Blossoms is talking about women struggle, what we call feminism. The struggle for women emancipation, feminism. And we are asking a question, does a woman in the Blossoms of the Savannah succeed to be a feminist? Partly yes, partly no. A Doll's House is almost also the same. We have got a home here, a house, where we have a couple with children. Yeah? So we are talking about Nora. We are talking about Helma. From the very superficial look, you might think that this is a very happy married couple enjoying life. But until you get to the home, to the house itself, that is when you know where the pinch lies. Sometimes, you know, when you are just passing by people's homes, you think, wow, what a couple. They are so good. They're walking to the supermarket, doing shopping, grocery. Oh, look at, they have a poodle dog that they walk around with in the estate. And you think that they are actually a happy, laughing couple. Only to realize that we have underlying problems. So in this case, Nora also becomes on a journey for realization. I've said that the journey of self-discovery is the greatest journey. And if all of us became self-aware or discovered ourselves, I'm telling you, this world will be a better place to live in. The reason why we are still just scaffolding or scavenging through the unknown is because the greatest majority of us have not yet discovered who we are, where we are going, what we are capable of. So our main character, the protagonist, the main character in literature is called a protagonist. It happens to be Nora, who in the first one and partly second act, because the play has only 3 acts, appears very naive, accepts to be used as a puppet. And you see when somebody string, you've seen a marionette, you just pull the string and the hand is up. You pull the string and the leg is up. So that is what most husbands do. You see, again, I'll be a little bit controversial. I said in the novel that women are their own worst enemies. But in the play, I'm saying that the reason why they are part of their worst enemies is because they have very, very draconian husbands. So as a husband, ask yourself again, what sort of husband are you? Yeah, that is a caveat that I have to put there. There are some husbands that do not allow women to be their own. So you see, now women, I'm speaking your tune. I think the daggers, the spears that you unleashed in the novel, you are now mitigating that and say, oh, Mwalimu, now you are speaking. Men must love their women very well. When you love your woman, you must give her financial independence. This is part of the reason that has been canvassed in this play. The reason why Nora is unhappy is because of financial independence. She has not discovered herself. She knows very well that the husband does not allow her to be financially independent. And let me tell you, in as much as some statistics say that part of the, mainly the reasons as to why people engage in conflicts is because of love, but I think this time around is because of money issues. If you cannot put the question of money, our finances before on the table, then I think it will become a Pandora's box. Some people say that when you are earning or you are employed, you need to show your wife your pay slip. Sometimes when you earn, you withdraw all the money and give it to her and tell my wife, my darling, I surrender this money all to you in notes and coins so that you do the budgeting. If there's a remainder, you can give it to me. That is what will make a woman smile and live with you until you are old age. But I know such men might not be in existence as we speak now. They are not there. If they are there, let me have one who can say that my wife knows my bank account. My wife knows the number of ATMs that I have. Hey, my friend, even if you are in an ICU and you realize that your wife has gotten knowledge of your PIN number, you will come out of the ICU and rectify the situation and go back to the ICU. So in that case, Nora is a very, very troubled woman. You can see even the humanity, the humane face that Nora puts on. At one time, Torvald Helmer is so sick to a point that he has to be taken for a vacation in Italy. That is the only place he could go for healing. You know what happens? The wife, Nora, secretly takes a loan in secret. Why does she take that loan? To make sure that the husband goes to Italy for a vacation so that he is cured. But here is a situation where the husband will not even accept the fact that the wife took a loan because he does not believe that women must have anything to do with financial controls. Coupled with other problems in the house, such as child upkeep and care. Many are times when Torvald accuses Nora of being not in a position to take care of the children, just like the father. I think it becomes the worst form of insult when somebody even goes ahead to accuse your own dad. That I think your father was immoral, and that's why some of these things Nora are quite hereditary. And he thinks that Nora acquired some of these traits from the late father. And you can see that Nora had taken a lot of sacrifice. There's a question of human sacrifice. How far can you go in terms of sacrificing for the other person? And I think Nora has gone those stages to make sure that the husband is in a position to be called a husband. Yeah, he entertains him by singing the tarantella. He entertains him by decorating the Christmas tree. But in what return does Torvald appreciate the wife's sacrifices? So at the end of the play, because of time, Nora makes a decision. So there is also the question of decision. Sometimes you say enough is enough. And therefore, I'm also speaking in favor of women. When you see a woman say enough is enough, and she has made an irreconcilable decision to walk away, it is not good to say that the woman was wrong. So in that case, Nora makes a decision to leave. When she leaves, quite a number of critics, because literature is all about critiquing or deconstruction, have said that the writer Bertolt Brecht the writer of Adol's House made a big mistake by allowing the wife, in this case Nora, to go away without actually coming back on a round table and looking for an amicable solution to the problems that were bedeviling the family. Others will say, what about the children? You cannot just wake up and say, I'm done with this man and I'm off. You're leaving the children behind. In that case, it is like a very dicey situation. It's like a balancing act. So are we standing with Nora or are we standing with Torvald? Again, it's a very good question I want you to give on the commentary on the engaging platforms that do exist. I know there isn't much time now left in terms of looking at the optional text, which is, I had carried one of the text. Memories We Lost has got 13 good stories, starting with what we call the theme story, which has not been tested so far. And one thing I have had experience with the Kenya National Examination Council is that the third or fourth year will never end without them testing on the theme story. It is imperative upon the students to go through all the 13 stories and classify them in terms of one, these are the key areas that you need to ask yourself. Maybe you can engage me further. I'll be directed the questions that you'll be asking. But one, characterization. Characterization. One thing about the anthology of the short story is that it has economy of everything. And when I say economy of everything, everything has been condensed. You'll get either 2 or 3 characters per story. So ask yourself, who are the characters in the story? Number 2, what are the major themes in the story? Number 3, what is the major stylistics, devices used in that particular story? And number 4, what is the relevance of this story to my contemporary situation? My contemporary situation. I'll take an example of the story number. Let me take even the first story, Memories We Lost. Memories We Lost. You are trying to give the contemporary connection. How true is it? And how do you associate with it? You'll ask yourself, do we have mental issues? Do we have mental cases in our society? The answer is yes. How do people deal with mental cases? So when you talk of schizophrenia, which I think is the key one that has been highlighted, you are trying to ask yourself, what is schizophrenia? What are the clinical symptoms of schizophrenia? How is schizophrenia treated? And what impact does schizophrenia treat? And you are also looking at issues such as stigmatization. When people with mental cases exist and some people are actually laughing at them, others are trying to avoid them. Stigma then exists. The question you're asking yourself, does stigma exist in my society? Yes. How do people deal with stigma? What effect does stigma solve? And lastly, you are looking at the solution. What solution, what remedies should we do as human beings to try to help those going through mental anguish to actually restore themselves? And you can see how the sister actually comes in aid to help this, the ailing sister overcome the problem. So in that case, all the 13 stories, you must make a storyboard. That is how you summarize, make a storyboard, or do what we call a lesson frame that covers that. You can do a stick note, stick on each. This book was taken by, I took it from one of my students, and I can just show you what she has done in one of the story. You can see that there is a stick note done here encompassing this. What are the characters involved in the story? What are the thematic concerns in the story? what are the stylistic devices in the story, and what is the relevance of that particular story. These sticky notes are not expensive, parents. You can buy to your students. So when they actually summarize a story, they just stick it. They go to the next story, they summarize, they put it there. It will come a time when they are doing the final fixes to these stories. They just go to it, and in a couple of minutes, whether they have done a storyboard, whether they have done a lesson frame or a literacy mat, you can do now the mat. All the four, they can just flop through, and it reduces on time. I want to end this lesson by saying that literature is not hard. Sometimes when we are marking literature, we do not have an absolute answer. Let me say that, let that go on record, that there is no absolute correct answer in what? In literature. Therefore, literature is like you are in a court of law. The way you are going to defend yourself is what is going to earn you marks. In terms of our marking scheme, we classify our marks as the follows. One, we have got a thin. Thin will only give you 1 out of 3. That means that you are very sketchy in your illustrations. You remember I said 3 in 1. 3 in 1, or Holy Trinity. Identification, illustration, the effect. So if you are very thin, you are very sketchy in identifying, in illustrating and giving the effect, we can do you justice. There's no 0 out of 3 sometimes. We are very generous. Sometimes we even presume that the computer, when we are doing tabulation, does not accept a 0. So we'll give you 1 out of 3. That means that even my own grandmother can get even a 1 out of 3. So you and my grandmother, muko hivi. Number 2, we have got affair, which will give you 2 out of 3. This means that you as a student, you have read these books. Reading is compulsory. You have read through the books. You are going an edge over to identify and give illustration. Though you are struggling, but I read through your essays and I see illustrations that are trying to make sense. I'll be fair on you. Sometimes even marking your script with COVID-19 in mind. I say this fella has really come a long way. Let me sympathize. Not even just sympathize, let me even empathize with the fella. But even that sympathy and empathy will require you to do something. So don't just sit there and think that Mr. Otoa Sifuna will empathize with you. The final marking scheme is a full. Full is going to give you 3 out of 3. It means you have identified, spot on, illustrated, spot on, and given an effectiveness, spot on. Your illustrations are, you do not use a wrong character. You lift a character from the novel and use it to illustrate the short story. And then you are avoiding the following. These are now what we give in terms of the marking scheme. Avoid being bookish. Bookish is lifting what you read, cut and paste. No, we do not do that in literature. In literature, we want you to paraphrase. In literature, we want you to stand on your feet and argue your point from the examples given. So avoid being bookish, where you are just narrating. In simple terms, stop narration. Nobody is interested. In fact, English literature teachers are so well learned that they will know when you are narrating a story. And they have read many books more than you. So do not narrate them. They are no longer interested with narration. Then avoid repetition, or avoid repetition of questions. We do not want you to repeat questions. Also, avoid definition of terms, especially in your introduction. Nobody wants you to. Feminism is a struggle, or feminism is the way forward for female emancipation. Discuss this using a doll's house. And then you start by saying, feminism is a struggle for women independence. Nobody wants that. just get what we call a paraphrased, or look at a general way of introduction, or look for a specific way of introducing that in your introduction. When you define terms in the introduction, you are going to be penalized. When you repeat phrases and words, you are going to be penalized. When in the composition that comes in paper 3, that is creative writing, you have been given a proverb, and you define the proverb. Instead of giving a scenario that tells more about the proverb, you are going to be penalized. So these are the rubrics. Do not. Part of the rubrics is also attempt only 3 questions. That will give you 60 marks. Do not attempt more than. Some students, I referred to them last week as McMende, and they will want either to do 2 questions or 4 questions. When you do 2 questions, you're going to be marked under rubric. When you do 4 questions, it's going to deny you more time that you'll have allocated doing quality work with the 3 essays. Remember, time is of great essence here. So do only 3 essays. Lastly, in as much as we do not really look at the linguistic aspect, but do good paragraphing of your work and use grammatically correct language. When you do that, your work is neat, your work has points, each paragraph is articulating the point that you want, and there's no redundance and repetition. I'm telling you, paper 3 is going to be very easy, and by extension, even paper 2. So in terms of the trends, I want you to have a look at A Doll's House quite repeatedly. I want you to have a look at The Blossoms of the Savannah quite repeatedly, because those are the compulsory texts that will come in paper 2 and in paper 3. And on that note, I'll receive the questions when I get them. I don't know, we will try to get how we can get back to you with the answers. But I want to salute again all the teachers that are actually going outside of their way to make sure that our learners all over the world, all over in the 47 counties of our country are well catered for. Teachers, as I end, you are like the candles. When you light up, you consume yourself so that the other person, and in this case the learner, may get the light. And on that note, may God bless you. May He continue showering us with a lot of blessings and survival tactics, like I did say here, that may God also mitigate this, that finally we shall write into the books of history that there was a time where Corona came and it became the thing of the past. May God be with you, and until we meet another day, my name is Otoa Sifuna, the literary maestro and teacher of paper 3, as well as an examiner. Thank you very much.